Russia's defense ministry said Monday that the military would hold drills involving tactical nuclear weapons, the first time such an exercise has been publicly announced by Moscow. Unlike nuclear-tipped intercontinental ballistic missiles that can destroy entire cities, tactical nuclear weapons for use against troops on the battlefield are less powerful and can have a yield as small as about 1 kiloton. The U.S. bomb dropped on Hiroshima during World War II was 15 kilotons. Such battlefield nuclear weapons, aerial bombs, warheads for short-range missiles or artillery munitions, can be very compact. Their small size allows them to be discreetly carried on a truck or plane. Unlike strategic weapons, which have been subject to arms control agreements between Moscow and Washington, tactical weapons never have been limited by any such pacts, and Russia hasn't released their numbers or any other specifics related to them. Since launching the full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly reminded Western nations about Moscow's nuclear might in a bid to discourage them from increasing military support to Kyiv. Early on in the war, Putin frequently referenced Moscow's nuclear arsenal by vowing repeatedly to use all means necessary to protect Russia. But he later toned down his statements as Ukraine's offensive last summer failed to reach its goals and Russia scored more gains on the battlefield. Moscow's defense doctrine envisages a nuclear response to an atomic strike or even an attack with conventional weapons that threaten the very existence of the Russian state. That vague wording has led some pro-Kremlin Russian experts to urge Putin to sharpen it to force the West to take the warnings more seriously. Putin said last fall that he sees no reason for such a change. There is no situation in which anything would threaten Russian statehood and the existence of the Russian state, he said. I think that no person of sober mind and clear memory could have an idea to use nuclear weapons against Russia. Last year, Russia moved some of its tactical nuclear weapons into the territory of Belarus, an ally that neighbors Ukraine and NATO members Poland, Latvia and Lithuania. Belarus authoritarian president, Alexander Lukashenko, had long urged Moscow to station nuclear weapons in his country, which has close military ties with Russia and served as a staging ground for the war in Ukraine. Both Putin and Lukashenko said that nuclear weapons deployment to Belarus was intended to counter perceived Western threats. Last year, Putin specifically linked the move to the UK government's decision to provide Ukraine with armor-piercing shells containing depleted uranium. Neither leader said how many were moved, only that Soviet-era facilities in the country were ready to accommodate them, and that Belarusian pilots and missile crews were trained to use them. The weapons have remained under Russian military control. The deployment of tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus, which has a 1,084-kilometer, 673-mile border with Ukraine, would allow Russian aircraft and missiles to reach potential targets there more easily and quickly if Moscow decides to use them. It has also extended Russia's capability to target several NATO allies in Eastern and Central Europe. Tactical nuclear weapons are small nuclear warheads and delivery systems intended for use on the battlefield or for a limited strike. They are designed to destroy enemy targets in a specific area without causing widespread radioactive fallout. The smallest tactical nuclear weapons can be 1 kiloton or less, producing the equivalent to 1,000 tons of the explosive TNT. The largest ones can be as big as 100 kilotons. Strategic nuclear weapons are larger, up to 1,000 kilotons, and are launched from longer range. Russia has 6,000 nuclear weapons, the world's largest nuclear arsenal, and can launch its nuclear weapons from land-based missiles, from submarines or from planes. Nuclear powers such as the US and Russia have found it equally effective to destroy targets on the battlefield by using modern conventional munitions. In addition, no nuclear-armed country has so far been willing to risk unleashing all-out nuclear war by employing tactical nuclear weapons. However, Russia might be more willing to use smaller tactical weapons than larger strategic missiles. They might not see it as crossing this big nuclear threshold, says Dr. Patricia Lewis, head of the International Security Program at the Chatham House think tank. They could see it as part of their conventional forces. In February 2022, shortly before invading Ukraine, President Putin placed Russia's nuclear forces at special combat readiness and held high-profile nuclear drills. More recently, he said, "If the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, we will without a doubt use all available means to protect Russia and our people." This is not a bluff. US President Joe Biden has warned Russia not to use nuclear weapons in the war in Ukraine. Speaking during an interview with CBS News, Mr. Biden said such action would change the face of war unlike anything since World War II, adding, "It'll be consequential." How the US and NATO would respond to any nuclear use is hard to predict. They may not want to escalate the situation further and risk all-out nuclear war, but they also might want to draw a line. However, Russia might also be deterred from using tactical nuclear weapons by another power, China. Russia is heavily dependent on Chinese support, says Dr. Heather Williams, nuclear expert at King's College London. But China has a no-first-use nuclear doctrine. So if Putin did use them, it would be incredibly difficult for China to stand by him. If he used them, he would probably lose China.